our goal was to sign 30 new clients in the quarter. We're going to be very, very honest about where we ended up here. We were one short. So 29 new clients, which is like kind of really frustrating. I've been a chief marketing officer on a fractional basis for nearly 300 B2B companies now. There's basically one thing that has the power to 10x what you're doing, and that's your market message or your unique point of view. It decreases your cost per lead, increases your deal value. It can even impact things like retention rates of your existing clients. So far, 100% of the leads that have come from YouTube have bought something from us. And I think a lot of B2B companies are sleeping on YouTube at the moment.
Hello, David. Welcome back to another episode of Building in Public.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
How are you doing on this Wednesday morning?
I'm doing great. You know, the weather in London is awesome. It feels like spring properly. I don't know, I've probably said this on a previous episode, but I think that London in spring is probably the best city in the world, in my opinion.
Yes.
And I've been to a lot of cities, and I think it's the best in the world. When the sun's out, just the whole vibe of the city changes. It's great.
It really, really does. Amazing. Okay, we're going to dive straight into it today. We've started an exciting episode. We've made it to the end of quarter one. And can we just recap on the numbers?
We certainly can. So obviously, as we know, and if you've watched previous episodes, you know that our goal was to sign 30 new clients in the quarter. We're going to be very, very honest about where we ended up here. If you were to look at our performance marketing scorecard, you would see that we were one short. So 29 new sales, which is like kind of really frustrating. However, the caveat is that there are 2 sales which are not accounted for in the performance marketing scorecard. So there was one that went forward yesterday, and we're recording this on the 2nd of April. So that was the 1st of April. So just on the cusp of the start of Q2. And then we had one that was a verbal yes, and they are moving forward with us, but we never track it on the scorecard. I don't know if it's we don't want to tempt fate. We never track it on the scorecard until we've got a contract signed and an invoice paid. So we've got that verbal yes, we will be moving forward with that company, but it's not on the scorecard. So in terms of results, if you were to look at the scorecard, it would say 29, which is a shame. But in reality, I think we can say at least 30 or 31 overall in the quarter.
29 plus 2. I think that's a win in my books.
Yeah, and it was always a case of shoot for the stars, and you might hit the moon. So I'm really happy with that. I think that we doubled our marketing spend, and it's not a given that when you double your spend, you keep the same underlying metrics, which we were able to do. And I think what's really exciting about this is that I actually think we're really just scraping the surface of what's possible. I actually think we could really improve those metrics on a platform like LinkedIn, for example, and probably decrease the cost per demo or the cost per lead. So it's really, really exciting to say, okay, we've doubled the marketing spend. We've kept the same underlying metrics, and I still feel like there's so much potential there. So that's really, really exciting.
I love that. Okay, so based on that, can you tell me kind of like some of the biggest learnings from this quarter?
One of the key things, and I talk about this all the time, I think I might have even posted on LinkedIn about this yesterday, is the biggest. So I've been a chief marketing officer on a fractional basis for nearly 300 B2B companies now, in one way or another, either as a fractional chief marketing officer or as a growth consultant. And there's basically one thing that has the power to improve everything that you're doing across the whole business, from a growth and marketing perspective. And that's your market message or your unique point of view. It really impacts so much of what you're doing as an organization. And this just hit home to me again and again and again over the last few years, and in this quarter once again. The trouble is, if you don't have a unique perspective or a unique point of view, you're always going to be competing based on price. So like, how cheap can you make the product? Or you're going to be competing on budget. How much can you spend on marketing in order to acquire clients? And that's where a lot of marketplaces are right now. You've got 3 or 4 big players. They're all just competing for how cheap can they make the product and how much can they spend on marketing. And that's fine. It's just that's not a game that I like playing, to be perfectly honest. And so if you can have a unique perspective, a unique point of view, then you really stand out against that. And in my opinion, that has the power to 10x what you're doing in terms of growth and marketing. And that's, for me, that's the reason why our marketing is so successful. It's not because we're amazing at creating content, although I think we are really good at creating content.
It's not great.
Sorry, that wasn't there. That wasn't a dig at you. I just mean, is the actual technical content creation, is that the reason why it performs really well? It's not because I don't think it's because we're absolutely, world class at running LinkedIn ads, although I think we are really good at doing that. It's the combination of having a unique perspective and a unique message that then gets transposed into content and then distributed using the paid ads. And the beauty of it is it if you get this right, if you have your unique point of view, you have your unique market message, and you get that resonance that we talk about, it can impact everything. So it decreases your cost per lead, it increases your close rates, it increases your deal value, it shortens your sales cycle. It can even impact things like retention rates of your existing clients and renewal rates with your existing clients. So it's one of those things that can just impact so much across the organization. And that really hit home to me again over the last 90 days.
How does a company go about finding their unique market message? Because I know what people are so quick to just talk about their product features, and that's not a unique point of view.
Yeah, look, it's difficult. I think the reality is that you can't fake it. So I did an in-person workshop with a company yesterday, really, really cool kind of agency style business here in London, who, they're turning over 2-3 million. We've got some great clients. They work with Meta, Apple, really, really cool company. And the reason that they're really good at what they do is that they've been doing it a long time, and they're quite unique in their approach to how they do their work. But if you were to go on their website, or if you were to review their content, you wouldn't necessarily see that. And so often the unique point of view or the unique insight is actually there already. And it's just a case of kind of pulling it out. But the difficult part is it can't be faked, right? So you have to be a genuine thought leader, as in someone who has thoughts that are on like the cutting edge of the industry. You can't just be someone who's parroting what other people are saying or trying to pretend that you have an insightful point of view. So that's the sort of harsh truth here. But most of the organizations that we're working with, for example, they do have that unique point of view. It's just that they need some help articulating it and putting it out into the marketplace. What was I going to say? Oh no, I've lost my train of thought.
I have another question.
Yeah, it'll probably come back to me. Go for it. Yeah.
How do you know if you found it? Like, how do you know if your message is resonating with your audience?
So there's two pieces to this. There's qualitative and there's quantitative. So if we start with the quantitative, you'll see your impressions will increase, your engagement levels will increase, you'll be having more conversations, good conversations with people, and you'll be generating more revenue. So those are kind of the quantitative pieces. And then there's also a qualitative aspect of this, which is like, does it feel like we're onto something here? And that's the bit that's a little bit more difficult. I don't know if you can speak to this from a content perspective, but you just have this feeling of this is really resonating with people. The type of comments that I'm getting on this piece of content is exactly what I want to see, or people are referring to it when they speak to me and when we have a consultation, or kind of there's just that sense that you're moving in the right direction. So that's a little bit less tangible, a little bit harder to put your finger on. I don't know if you can speak to that from a content creation perspective, because there's often an iterative approach, isn't there, to get to something that we feel like really, really hits home.
That's it. So what we typically do is we'll test, like, say, 4 different messages or 4 different pillars that we think based on when listening to customer interviews, based on speaking obviously to the client who knows their audience better than we do. And we develop what we call content pillars, and then content around those pillars in multiple formats. So blog articles, long form videos, infographics, memes, all of it. And then we post it organically and just test and measure the performance and constantly just look at the performance of not only the content pillars, but also the content formats to a CB, and then just constantly like scientifically reiterate on the content that we're creating to make it better and better and better.
I think one of the things you said there is one of the really interesting aspects is you have to line up the message, but you also have to line up the platform and the format.
Exactly.
So like you can have the right message, but you could be sharing it on the wrong platform. Or you can have the right message and it's shared on the right platform, but you've got the wrong format. So there's almost like those three aspects need to be lined up.
And I wish you could say that like on LinkedIn, they only want infographics. But what we're noticing is it's also industry specific and client specific. So like for one client, a carousel might perform really well, but for another, it does terribly. So we've got to just work with every client. That's why it's not an overnight process. Like it takes at least a month to post the content, actually gauge the performance, and then to start to improve it. But the bonus is that your content just keeps getting better and better and better.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the key is, how do you get more out of what you're doing? Rather than just spending more and more and more. And it's by getting your content better and better and your market message better and better. And I think the platform and format thing is a really interesting case study from our perspective, because if you look at our content, for example, on LinkedIn, which has always been one of our biggest platforms, we do a lot of video content on LinkedIn. It's quite authentic. It's not highly produced or anything like that. And we've really lined up a market message with the platform of LinkedIn and with the format that we're posting there. And it's very, very effective for us. And then a few months ago, we tried to launch on YouTube, and we basically took the same message and the same format and we tried to put it in a new platform. And it didn't work that well. It just didn't really get much reach or resonance, and it didn't work that well. So what's exciting is we've been experimenting there. We've also taken on some external support as well. And now I feel like on YouTube as a platform, we've lined up the platform with the message and with the format. And that's really exciting to see as well, because that's been performing well, and we're only, whatever it is, like we're only really a quarter into that, aren't we?
Yes, and I think we've got, was it 3 leads or 4 leads from YouTube in the last quarter, and they've been good quality from what I can tell.
So far, 100% of the leads that have come from YouTube have bought something from us.
Amazing. Literally
100%. I think it's either 3 for 3 or 4 for 4. So it does go to show that if someone's watching your, long form video and consuming your content, you can be confident that they're a really good fit to work with you, and they'll start to get to know you, in that long form content. So it's pretty exciting. I think a lot of B2B companies are sleeping on LinkedIn at the moment. Not LinkedIn, on YouTube at the moment.
Yes, I agree. I think it's a great platform for long form content, for like demand gen, thought leadership style content on YouTube. Another thing that we've kind of spoke a bit about over the last few weeks is engagement on LinkedIn. So often we talk about content, but I just want to talk a little bit about engagements and some of the learnings that we've seen.
Yes, I think we've seen this is really important. So if we look at our partners, all the companies that we're working with, the ones that are seeing probably the best results on LinkedIn, consistently, they're doing some form of engagement. So what does that mean? It means like commenting on posts. It means connecting with new people. It means striking up conversations with them, etc., etc. And just seeing it like a platform to network on, almost like in-person networking. And that helps us for 2 reasons. As far as this is our kind of hypothesis, is it helps us for a couple of reasons. One, it helps us LinkedIn sees us as a good citizen on the platform, if we're very active. And therefore, you tend to find that your content gets better reach because you kind of get that algorithm juice, for like one of a better word. And then the other piece is it just helps, people that are seeing your content and enjoying your content and maybe viewing your profile or engaging with your content, and you start a conversation with them, it just accelerates the process of them potentially wanting to speak with you and potentially, booking in a call or being a fit to work with you. So those are the two sides that we're really seeing. But on a platform like LinkedIn, we're seeing that has quite a big impact. And again, YouTube is totally different to this, isn't it? Because it's not really an engagement platform. It's about the quality of your content and what are the view rates, how long are people sticking around on the content, and so on and so forth. Whereas your LinkedIn, your Instagram, your platforms like that are much more about how much engagement are you getting on your content.
Yeah, I kind of see it like if you go to an expo and you stand next to your pull-up banner, but then you don't say anything. Don't who walks past you, like just waiting for people to buy your thing based on this pull-up banner. Like it's not going to work, right? You really need to engage on platform.
I think that's a great analogy.
The best content in the world will not generate the leads that you're looking for if you're not engaging.
Do you think that's true?
I mean,
the best content in the world.
Consistently. I mean, you might have a spark where you get a viral post, but I do believe, especially on a platform like LinkedIn, I don't know, specifically talking about LinkedIn, that engagement is just as important as content creation. And I was also very surprised to say that you could get inbound like leads and calls without posting content and just doing engagement. But I don't know if you can win the reverse.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think I was seeing it as like the final 10-20%.
Little push over.
But you're seeing it more like almost 50-50, which makes sense. I definitely think your point around the engagement is really important. I think, and I've noticed a lot of people doing this, like having very thoughtful comments on other people's posts, or often it gets more attention than having a great post. Because you almost piggyback on like a really successful post. You kind of piggyback on it in a way.
Yes, exactly.
So definitely, yeah, that's an interesting idea. Yeah.
Another thing that we've been doing quite a lot of learnings about is how to measure good content. Like, what is good performance? Is it impressions or is it engagement? And we're learning a lot in that space. I think calculating engagement rates so that we're taking both into account. And obviously, LinkedIn gives us some really great insights through their analytics tool to like track the organic performance, and that really helps us feed into the content strategy.
So how would you say we measure performance of content? Like what does that look like?
So like in the past, we looked at impressions and then we looked at engagement. So we looked at them separately. So I see impressions as algorithm based. So this comes into the time of day that you post. Did you warm up your audience before you posted? So like how many times did the algorithm serve your content to someone's screen? Now this is important, obviously. But for me, if you wanted to see if your content is resonating, if you have a unique point of view and people are interested in your unique point of view, it's about engagements. It's about, did they like, comment, or repost it? And then to actually look at impressions against engagements as a ratio to work out a percentage is going to calculate your engagement rate, because the algorithm might have served the post to 10,000 people, but it got 2 engagements. Right? That post is not really resonating. So we would say, oh, this post performed really well because it got 10,000 impressions. But it didn't actually resonate with the audience because no one engaged with it. But you might have a post that has 500 impressions with 25 engagements. So you need to compare the posts. How many times was it served and how many times was it engaged with? Not in isolation.
Interesting.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. Yeah. I think it's difficult overall as well, isn't it? Because it's very rarely one piece of content that does the work for you. It's actually all of the content that someone sees over 3 months or 6 months. So it can be difficult, can't it, to pinpoint, oh, this is a great piece of content or that is a great piece of content, because it might be, but only because they've seen the previous 4 posts that you posted as well. So that's where I think it's just about it is about that consistency and just having that core message that you're driving home.
Yeah. So looking at the patterns within that adjacent, which messages are like resonating more.
Yes, exactly. And this is really interesting because I had this conversation again. I'm just thinking back to yesterday, the workshop that I had with this company. And what became clear to me is because they had some campaign ideas. So sort of short term, we want to talk about this for the month of April. We want to talk about this for the month of May. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But I think what I realized is that I've been talking about the same things now for 2 years. And it sort of feels like people are only just starting to get it now. Do you know what I mean? So I think that one thing that always comes back to me and I always get reminded of is that you need to just keep saying the same things over and over again. Yes, you can have your campaigns, but I think you want an evergreen point of view that you keep coming back to over and over again. And just never underestimate how many times people need to hear things before it starts to actually sink in.
It's so true. I mean, I think seasonal campaigns are important, but I agree. You need to have consistent messaging that you can be evergreen throughout the year. But for example, like a CPA, like an accountant, they're going to want to really like hone in on the pain points around tax season when it's tax season. No point talking about it like in December.
Totally. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, totally.
Any other learnings that you've taken away from this quarter?
Yes. So I think the final piece is the fact that the content is the strategy, I think is how we'd phrase this, which meaning, we've talked about unique point of view. And I think sometimes we overcomplicate things, especially when we're running ads, because we kind of think, and it's really hard to get people out of this mindset, but they kind of think, hang on, I'm spending money on ads. Like, how am I going to generate leads from those ads? And so often what people do is they're posting organic content on LinkedIn. And then when they start to run ads, they follow a very sort of lead gen focused approach, which is trying to get leads, today. I want to start ads today and start generating leads today. The way that we think about growth and marketing is it's actually just the best way to think about it is that it's an organic content strategy. And so the content is the main thing. If you don't have great content, and don't start running ads. And then the ads are just the rocket fuel, which help us with distribution. So we find great content that resonates with people and works really well. And then we use the ads to boost the reach and the distribution so that the right people are seeing the content at the right times. And I think that's hit home to me again this quarter as well, because one of the things I really notice is that when my organic content is performing well, we generate more leads and more inbound, even though we're still consistently spending roughly the same on our ads. And then when I see a dip in my organic performance, the leads tend to dip as well. So it's really difficult with our sort of strategy to tell exactly where the leads are coming from, but I don't think that's a coincidence. So it's super interesting.
So would you say that we should be switching out content for ads based on organic performance? And like, how frequently do you think that we should be managing that?
It's difficult to give like a hard and fast rule for everyone, isn't it? But I think broadly speaking, what I would say is that, what we were talking about earlier. So line up your market message with the platform that you're using, and with the format on that platform that works for your business. And then once you've found that, you add the fourth piece, which is that you pay for ads so that more people are seeing it. But I think you've got to have great content first and then use the ads to promote it rather than the other way around. Obviously, if you have the budget to start with ads, it allows you to test much more quickly and go through those cycles much more quickly. But for most businesses, you should spend a little bit of time figuring out the message, the platform, and the format first, and then pay for ads afterwards. So, for example, this is why we haven't paid for ads on YouTube yet, but we probably will at some point, because we just didn't feel like we'd cracked the platform. We didn't have the right content for the platform. And so why would ads just amplify whatever you're doing. So why would I amplify something that's not performing very well? Same goes for LinkedIn. If your LinkedIn content's not really performing that well, then you need to solve that really before you start running ads, because it's just going to amplify. If your content's average, it's going to amplify average content.
And do you think that people could still adopt an organic strategy on LinkedIn if they don't have budget for ads?
Yeah, if you have great content and you're doing some of the engagement activities we talked about, and you have a product that really helps people, you have a market message that really connects with them, there's no reason why you can't see great results from organic content alone on LinkedIn. I think there's loads of examples of people who are doing that. Yeah.
I agree with what you said though, but spending the money on ads is like pouring jet fuel on it. You're going to get it faster. You're going to expand your audience faster. Whereas with organic, without paid ads, you're really going to have to do a lot of legwork.
Yeah, totally. And it's the great thing about the ads is it's very scalable, and it's very trackable. And so once you've got something that's working, it's sort of a no-brainer. Depending on the metrics within your business, it's sort of a no-brainer to increase your velocity with ads. Even if you're just doing the retargeting aspect, for example, just to make sure that people keep seeing you over and over again once they discover you. I do think it's getting harder on LinkedIn. I think that it's getting more competitive, and so your content has to be better and better and better to stand out. But it's certainly possible to get there with just organic.
You said something that sparked another question. Sorry, I've really Can you talk a little bit about retargeting and because I feel like sometimes that's a low-hanging fruit that a lot of clients are not utilizing.
Yeah, that's so true. It's nearly always one of the first things that we set up for companies. And this is quite common, when we're working with an organization that's maybe larger, been around a while, maybe doing 10 to 50 million in annual turnover. It's amazing how often they're not retargeting people. So for example, they might be spending 10K a month on Google ads, and they're just running Google ads to a landing page. And then if someone doesn't convert right away, then they're just going to probably forget about you. The only way to get back to that page is to type the same keyword in again and then click the same link again. So there's often some really low hanging fruit by just putting a relatively low ad spend on LinkedIn and retargeting all of those people who have been visiting your website. The traffic from Google ads is usually highly qualified. So they're usually, at the very least, they're problem aware. Often they're problem and solution aware. And then there's just been a reason why they haven't bought your thing straight away. So it's often a no-brainer, even if we don't spend any more. So let's say we have that budget of 10,000 a month and we just divert maybe 500 to 1,000 for retargeting on a platform like LinkedIn. That will increase the results of your campaign overall. So it's often a really obvious piece of low hanging fruit that people are not utilizing. My view, I think the way that you launch on a new platform at the moment, this is my view, and this is what we'll do on LinkedIn, on YouTube, for example. I keep getting this mixed up, sorry. So I think you start with organic content, and then if you can then launch ads, you launch with a retargeting audience. So people who are finding your website or people who are finding you in other ways. And then once your retargeting audience is working well, you then launch the cold to build up your following and build up your awareness on platform. So I think those are the sort of step by step if you're launching on a new platform, because then you've got that ready-made audience ready to go. Just increases your kind of growth velocity.
Amazing. Okay, so last question for you. What can we expect, or what's the plan for quarter two? Now that we've finished with our goal for quarter one?
Yeah, you kind of go in cycles in business, don't you? So we, at this point, we probably won't be continuing to increase our marketing spend, although we probably could. We're going to maintain it where it is, and we're going to try and improve our processes. So I think we can significantly improve some of our underlying metrics around cost per demo, cost per lead, and so on and so forth. We're also probably going to make, I don't want to talk about it too much, but we're going to make probably some small changes to our sales process and how that works in practice. And then we're also just always constantly improving our product and our delivery to make sure that we're delivering great results for our partners as well. So that's really going to be the focus of Q2. In terms of the podcast, I don't know if you want to talk about this, but I think we're expecting to invite some more team members on to talk about various aspects of our growth and kind of business journey. So probably our head of performance marketing, maybe even our head of operations, to talk about some of the stuff that goes on behind the scenes and some of the learnings there. So that's what people can expect from a podcast perspective.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it would be great to bring Yaku, the head of performance, to talk about how I know one of our strategic goals for this quarter is to bring down our costs per demo on LinkedIn and to kind of see his scientific brain behind the scenes of how he's doing that.
He's so detail orientated. I was talking about that yesterday, which is good because I'm very big picture. So it's great to have people who are very, very, very detail orientated. Maybe we should do that. Put him under some pressure.
Yeah.
If we put it on blast, put our goals on blast, because we put our goals on blast for Q1. Why don't we do it for Q2 as well? So we'll chat to him first before we do that. That might make him sweat a little bit. That could be fun.
I think that's also, you mentioned it as something that's been a big win for us in quarter one is the operations side of things. And I know that's not really to do with sales and things, but when it comes to running a business, having a smooth ship is just as important as your product. And that's been
it's massive. It's absolutely massive, isn't it? And I think the more I do this, the more I realize that you just have to take a holistic approach. Like if you really want to grow your business, yes, obviously marketing and sales is the key aspect. But if your delivery or your operations is broken, then you can only scale so far. So there's a couple of businesses that we're looking at the moment for kind of more in-depth partnerships, kind of in almost investment type opportunities. And if we were to do that, we would be looking at how can we improve all of the areas of that company, from sales and marketing to operations and so on and so forth. So that's quite exciting.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time, and we'll catch up again soon.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks, David. Bye.
Bye.